Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Brian. The subject of our video today is our 2007 GMC Acadia. We've had this thing pretty much exactly 14 years now. It's got 248,000 miles on it. It's had its share of problems, but one of them has been the air conditioning has been rock solid until today. The customer complaint, the customer being my daughter, is that it's not cold, and it's not. So we're going to take a look into that and see what we can figure out. And it's like 94 degrees out here, so here we go. I have already confirmed the air conditioning cycles. It has some refrigerant in it, but it cycles excessively. And I put the gauges on it, and it is low, but before I put the gauges on it, I noticed a bunch of oil around this cap. And when I pulled the cap off, there was a little spurt of pressure. See if it does it again. It didn't this time, but obviously we've lost some refrigerant from there, and the low side port is way down there somewhere. And it was actually a little bit oily too. So before I do anything, I'm going to see if I can replace the cores in these valves. My Schrader valve tool would not fit down in this hole. It's super tiny, so I got another kit that had a smaller one and had some smaller valves. It turns out, apparently this high side port is not a Schrader valve. It's something else. And from what I understand, this actually unscrews and you can replace that. The low side one is a Schrader valve, and I've already checked it, and it was tight. So what we're going to do is we're going to evacuate the system, and then we'll come back and replace those valves just to see what we have in here. High side port's the red, it's the one here on top. The low side is way down in here in burn your hand territory. I don't know if you can see that. They must have factory dye in the system. That green will show up, but it's our oil leaking out. So that's how much our charge is in there. This is resting. Normally, I would expect with it running the low side to be down between 40 and 50 pounds. We'll start it up and turn on the air and see what happens. So I started the car, and you will hear the compressor cycle, but we're clearly way low on charge. As I said, I would expect to be between 40 and 50 pounds on the low side, and the high side is going to be 200 maybe. I don't remember, I'm no expert. So the next step will be to remove what little bit of refrigerant is still in the system by whatever means you have available, and then we'll see what we can do to replace the valves, and we'll see if it'll hold a vacuum. The refrigerant has magically left the system, what little was in there. So now let's see what it takes to replace this valve. As I said, it appears not to be a Schrader valve. From what I understand, this will unscrew. That was actually pretty loose. So I don't know if it was leaking through the valve or if that O-ring was leaking. So I guess we need to go find one of those and find about 4 cans of refrigerant. The low side port, which is way down here, looks like the valve is made into it. It's like a standard Schrader valve. Got lucky on that one. It's on the ground now. It was not on the ground. So we should be able to find something in there for that. Okay, there's the part. Dorman 800955 appears to be the correct one. Oil up that O-ring a little bit with some of the oil that's oozed its way into this cap. It's an O-ring seal, so it doesn't need to be like super snug. Now let's fish one of these out of here. I'm not really sure what the difference is here, although that green one looks to be the right one. All right, it went in there and it appears to be tight. Now, hook our gauges back up again. Now we can hook up my handy dandy Chinesium vacuum pump. Open up our ports. And somewhere on here is a switch. There we go. That sounds much better. Now we're pulling a vacuum. So we'll let that sit here for, I don't know, half hour at least. We want to get down as low as we can go. So that vacuum pump's been pulling on there for about 45 minutes and we're down to about 28 and a half. So I'm going to go ahead and close everything off. Now we'll let that sit there for a while and see if it'll hold that vacuum. If it doesn't, and we lose vacuum, then we've got a leak somewhere. Okay, we've sat here about 30 minutes. We haven't lost any of our vacuum, so I think we are ready to charge. You likely don't need to get this convoluted with your setup, but here's how I've been doing it. So I know how much I put in here. We want to put in 2.32 pounds or 1.05 kilograms. So I should be able to connect our can. Everything's still shut here in the manifold. Should charge the manifold. Set all this on here. Tear it out. Now I should be able to keep track of how much by weight refrigerant I've added. Since there's a vacuum in the system, I should be able to static charge part of it just by opening up the low side port. And most of the time that shit doesn't work. So we'll start the vehicle. Now with it running, it should, I would hope, start pulling in refrigerant. This is warm water bath. It helps get all of the refrigerant out of the can. So we obviously have some in there because we just heard the compressor come on. We have to add 3 cans in a piece. And in my experience, it's going to take a while. So we'll just keep letting it out of this can. And it'll just keep cycling like that as it sucks it in. Sometimes it helps if you kind of shake the can a little bit. So it looks like at this point the scale is going to flake out on me, but that can's pretty much empty. We can go ahead and shut this off. Go ahead and crack another can. Yeah, that can's pretty much completely empty, so that's good. Usually I have a hard time getting it all out of these cans. See if the scale wants to cooperate this time. I could feel it open the valve. Just pulling in that can. I have a multimeter here with a temperature probe shoved down the vent. So we measure our temperature. We're on 73, 72. It just jumped down a bunch, so it's pulling in. It's pretty much turned my hot water cold. So another option is you kind of swirl the can a little bit. You don't want to flip it over and put a big slug of liquid in there. You just want the gas. You can also heat it with your hands. That'll help get it out of there. I can tell it just took some in because that thing got instantly cold. So there's just a little bit left in that can. I'll go for the third. I think our scale's kind of useless at this point, but come on. We'll try it anyway. There's the start of our third can. Still pulling it in slow. It's already cooled off this water. Sometimes if you rev it up a little bit, it'll help. Kind of helps run the compressor faster and suck in the refrigerant. We also brought the fans on, so we're getting there. Sometimes you can hold the fan or the can in front of the fans, let it heat the bottle that way. Still a little bit left. Give it one last shot of hot water. Not really sure when my battery died, but we've put 3 complete cans in there. Those are our pressures, which are pretty close to I think what they should be. We have 53-degree air. If we assume that we got everything out of every single can, so yeah, most of it's out of there. That would be 1 kilogram or 1.02 kilograms, I think, something like that. Calls for 1.05. So we will add just a hair more. This being a full can, it shouldn't take it long. It's 50-degree air. I don't know that you can ask for much more than that. I think we'll call it right here. I've shut the AC off, so we'll let these pressures equalize, then we'll shut it down, then we'll remove the gauges. These newer style cans actually have a valve, so the old kind you just punctured it and you had to use the entire thing. So that's kind of nice. So I'll be, in theory, be able to take this valve off and save the rest of this can. And everything's off. You'll be able to close this valve. Remove it. I used to check these with soap and water to see if it was still bubbling, but what I found is that unless you got that soap and water out of there, it would corrode it and possibly make it worse. So we'll just hope for the best. Okay, so I think we have successfully fixed our air conditioning problem with 3 cans of refrigerant. Well, 3 and a little bit. $8 valve. They sell those little recharge it in the can kits at the auto parts stores. I've never had much luck with those. Who knows what's in them. But this, at least this way, we're doing it the correct way and removing all the air from the system. We have new valves in there. Everything seems to be working fine. So if y'all were interested in doing this by yourself at home, I think it's a Harbor Freight set of gauges, and then it's probably 50 bucks. I don't remember, it's a couple years ago. Vacuum pump, I think that was like a $79 Amazon special. And then we're about $35 into refrigerant and that valve. So anyway, she lives to fight another day. Now about those headlights. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.